A lot of the questions that have been coming up recently are about different paths, which is really more about the modalities. I mean, just to clarify that, there really is only one path. There is no path, something like that. It's just what's here, what is showing up, what is arising, what is expressing, what is appearing. And also, obviously, all the things that are here that are not appearing, the infinitude of whatever this seems to be. So the real questions are seemingly around the path of insight, or the path of intuition, or the path of introspection, however you want to call those pieces. That's actually the essence of what self-inquiry is all about. We could say that path of insight comes down to something in neuroscience that they refer to as metacognition. And it's often talked about being one of the highest levels of intelligence. Metacognition is the ability to have thoughts about thoughts, which is essentially literally what insight means. It's taking, this essence of being able to see and turn it inward. So it's taking thoughts and turning them on thoughts. Essentially, what the path of insight is a metacognitive approach to the way that these particular mechanisms or appearances of thought seem to be functioning, and maybe patterns therein that begin to give us other places to engage. Some questions that can be really powerful in that regard, if you are still utilizing inquiry, which can definitely keep us sharp in a certain form of awareness, is really honing into a variety of questions. What I've discovered working with people one-on-one for a while is that the question why doesn't tend to serve a lot of a purpose other than just keeping a narrative developing. Because really ask yourself this: if you discover why, does that change anything about the experience itself? And I think what you'll find is it tends to be a red herring. It takes us off on a side quest. We might discover the why, but the experience seems to remain the same, or our relationship with the experience seems to remain the same. So instead of focusing on the why, which I know can be really sticky and seems to yield fruit, yet if you really follow that thread, you'll see that it tends not to. Something that can be more powerful is a what. Instead of why is this, just make that small adjustment into what is this. And that all that will do is that will just continue to invite curiosity into the experience. Because in order to answer that question, what is this, there has to be a variety of attention that is immersive and engaged in something that is absolutely experiential, absolutely energetic, absolutely sensational, maybe emotional, however these things tend to show up in your experience. And what you can find here is certain thoughts will arise and they will make a declarative statement. That tends to be the case. They tend to be declarative, forceful, imposing, and conclusive. And that gives you an immediate opportunity to engage with that thought in a metacognitive way, in an introspective way. So for instance, it could be something like, it is cold right now. Let's say that thought declares. Instead of living in that conclusion and then attempting to pursue some sort of solution, we can also engage that thought directly, utilizing the power of what. And the subject of that sentence is cold. It's cold here. So we begin to ask, well, what is cold? What is the nature of cold? And that basically is an invitation for our attention to move directly into the experience and to firsthand, in real time, examine cold, which is still a conclusion. And what we begin to find is a lot of intricacies, zooming in, something penetrative in the experience itself. This is a more potent approach to thoughts rather than why. Location, where, can be interesting as well. Yet fundamentally, the what brings us into the experience that begins to present something else. So let's just say we go from there. We find something more penetrating in that particular thought. Recursive, we could say. So, for instance, what is cold? Then all of a sudden we move into the experience and we feel the sensations on the skin. We feel the experience of warmth seemingly interacting with cold in what is our perception of the body. And then the mind will say, well, it's sharpness, something like that. We then have an opportunity to engage that particular conclusion or declaration in a more recursive way. And we can simply say, what is sharp? And what this tends to do is it tends to bring us into such a form of immersion of our experience that we aren't really engaging with a string of thought any longer, yet we're bringing attention to something that is much more apparent in the senses. And that right there is, in a nutshell, the essence of introspection, to essentially take a thought and to turn and to put a stop and to basically turn that thought on itself. That right there is a metacognitive practice. First, to notice the thought, and then second, to utilize that thought as a point of further investigation. And this is similar in some ways to using conclusion as a point of curiosity. Yet even more than that, it is a very simple and mechanical, formulaic way to constantly engage in a metacognitive way. And from there, basically what happens is over time, through the exposure, the constant regular engagement with our experiences, we start to become aware of a type of attention that is always present in our senses. And that by itself begins to open the aperture of the mind, the aperture of perception, and we start to see more thoroughly, more concretely, how we are not thought. Instead, thoughts are just a part of the landscape. So if you are someone right now that feels like you are doomed to have an exclusive relationship with your thoughts, these thoughts that continue to come up, they feel like they're punishing you, this is your encouragement now, just to, in this very moment, just to engage that thought and turn the sight inwardly. Turn the thought against the thought just for a moment, and do it in a way where you ask what based on the subject of that thought. So let's say another thought, I'm having a bad day. Let's say that thought comes up. Or something like, this sucks. That's a good one. That one's a common one. What is sucking in this moment, in this experience? Where is the sucking? What is that like? What is suck? And something is likely to show up. Something in the sensation, something in emotion. Could be more thought, but turn it again. Be persistent. So then the thought says, well, just the attitude of the people I'm working with. That's what sucks. Turn it again. What is attitude in this experience? And what you begin to find is it's always referring to something energetic or sensational. Always. That is the basis of all of this. And we could say, yes, it is energetic, but we might not perceive it as energetic right away. So if it shows up as an emotion or it shows up as a sensation, doesn't really matter. Follow those particular breadcrumbs and you will begin to see that at the very base of it is a signature that you can become aware of. And from there, your entire dedication to this is to remain exposed to whatever that signature seems to be. Let it be acute. So all of a sudden you detect something here. Well, this is what sucks. This feeling right here that seems to be located maybe in the solar plexus. Okay, so then what we do is then we move into there. What is the feeling? And then we start to find that in that experience, there's something a lot more acute. It has a granular texture or a flavor or a color or something about it begins to stand out. And what we start to find is in an energetic way, we stay curious and we're essentially asking what, but it no longer has the verbal quality of what that comes along with it. So just for now, just in this particular moment, see what this yields. See what happens when you take it, instead of asking why or where this comes from or what maybe started this, ask more about what in the subject of it is here in the experience, and it will begin to reveal what is always here. Something, always here. Maybe it seems obvious, maybe it seems mysterious, yet something always here. And essentially all we're doing in this is attuning attention to that so that we never have a sense of being away from it, because in reality, we are never away from that. Play with that for a little bit. See what that starts to produce, and would love to hear some questions and comments about this and how that may have yielded some more fruit. And as always, thanks. Nice to see you.